Keeping Step Limited, question and solution. This is video tutorial number 2 of 2. In video tutorial number 1, we looked at the preparation of the budget control statement. Now, in this particular video, we're going to look at calculating the following sub-variances. We will deal with the material price and usage variance together, then we deal with the labour rate and efficiency variance, and then finally we'll deal with the variable overhead, expenditure and efficiency variance. So, just to summarize on the variances, we can see that we calculated the following variances. The direct material, which of course is the leather, which comes in square meters, we have a €225 favourable variance. For the direct labour, we have a €485 adverse variance. And for the variable overheads, we have a €960 adverse variance. So we're now going to start off by looking at the direct materials. Now for the direct materials, we can divide it into a price and usage variance. So starting off with the price variance. Now we're going to use a little shorthand notation for this, and our shorthand notation will be AP, standing for actual price, minus SB, standard price, multiplied by AQ, actual quantity. Now we're dealing with materials. The material is the leather, and it comes in square meters. So the question then is, what was the actual price per square meter? What was the original standard price per square meter? And how many square meters were actually used? Now I'm going to have to go back to the question itself to have a look at this information. So going back here, we can see the actual cost of the leather. Well, we just take this out here. €47,775 was paid to buy 9,750 square meters of leather. Now if you work that out, that works out at €4.90 per square meter. Now that is the actual price. So the actual price for leather came to €4.90 per square meter. Up here at the top of the question, the original budget or standard price was €5 a square meter, and the actual quantity, that's this figure here, 9,750 square meters. So if I go back to my question here, I'll pop in this information. So just going through the workings one more time, the actual price works out at the €4.90 per square meter, the standard price given in the question, and the actual quantity given in the question. So if I pop this information in, here we go, 490 minus 5, that'll give us a difference of 10 cents by 9 per square meter. By 9,750 square meters, it gives us a variance of €975 favourable. So therefore, the direct material price variance is €975 favourable. Now moving on to the usage variance. The direct material usage variance, and our little shorthand notation, our formula is as follows. Actual quantity compared to the standard quantity multiplied by the standard price. Now I already have a lot of this information. I just used the actual quantity a few seconds ago, and I just used the standard price a few seconds ago. So what I need is the standard quantity. So back to the question here. Standard quantity, given the fact that 3,200 units or boots were actually made, how much leather should have been used? Well, we can see up here from the original standard, it should take 3 square meters of leather to make one boot. So, given the fact that we made 3,200, we would have expected to use 9,600 square meters of leather. Now, take that information back to our workings here. I'll just go over that. The actual quantity, well, that's given. We have that from there. The standard quantity, we just discussed that. 3,200 boots were actually made, and we should use 3 square meters per boot. That's 9,600. And the standard price, of course, we have that as well. So if I pop that information in here, what I get is 9,750 actual quantity compared to 9,600 standard quantity. So what that actually means is that 150 square meters of leather more than anticipated were used at €5 gives us €750 of an adverse variance. Now let's just check this. We have 975 favorable, and I'll take away from that the 750 adverse, and what that gives me is 225 of a net favorable variance. Now if I go look at my solution to part A, I can see that's exactly what I'm expecting. So what I can now say is my €225 favorable direct material cost variance can be subdivided into a €975 favorable price variance and a €750 adverse usage variance. Now, back to the question. So the material price and usage variance we have just calculated. We are now going to look at the labor rate and the labor efficiency variances. So if I go back to my table, which I calculated at the end of part A, we can see that the direct labor cost variance came to €4,785 and it was adverse. We have a cost overrun. So now I will calculate these. So I'm going to calculate a direct labor rate variance and an efficiency variance. And remember, the sum of the rate variance and the efficiency variance has to give me the total direct labor cost variance of 4,785 adverse. So starting off with the direct labor rate variance, we put in our little formula. Now you note the little formula I'm using here is the same. It can vary from textbook to textbook, but I like to use the same little formula. But just remember, we're under the heading of direct labor now. So the actual price refers to the price we paid per hour of direct labor. The standard price refers to the original budget or standard per hour for direct labor, and quantity refers to the number of hours. So let's go and have a look at that. So we can see here, direct labor, the original budget or standard price was €4 per hour. The actual number of hours, 5,850 hours were used, and the actual price, well, we paid €23,985 for 5,850 hours, so that would work out at a price of €4.10 per hour. So that there is the actual price for labor. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop those numbers in. We'll just show the workings again over here. So we have the actual price, as I just discussed, €23,985 divided by the 5,850 DLH, direct labor hours, gives us €4.10 per direct labor hour. Standard price is €4, given in the question, and the actual quantity, 5,850 direct labor hours, also given in the question. So if I pop that information in, I get a variance of a direct labor rate variance, remember we're in the rate variance, of €585 adverse. Now we look at the direct labor efficiency variance. And the little formula we use, same as with the direct materials, we have the actual quantity by the standard quantity by the standard price. Except remember now that we're dealing with labor, so it's hours. The actual quantity we just used a second ago, standard price we just used, so the standard quantity is what we need to look at. Now, it's here. Given the fact that 3,200 boots were made, How long should it have taken? Well, you can see here it should take 1.5 hours to make a boot. So therefore, the total time should have been 4,800 hours. So I'll just bring that back here. We put the workings over here. Actual quantity given. Standard quantity, 3,100 boots were actually made. Should take an hour and a half per boot. So that's 4,800 DLH, direct labor hours. And standard price, €4. So if I pop all that information in, I'll get 4,200 of an adverse variance. Now, if I take the rate variance, 585 adverse, plus the efficiency variance, 4,200 adverse, that gives me 4,785 as an adverse total direct labor cost variance, which is exactly what I was expecting to get. Now finally we're going to look at the variable overhead expenditure and the variable overhead efficiency variance. If we look at the table from the end of part A, we can see we have a total variable overhead cost variance of 960 adverse, and we're going to subdivide that into an expenditure and an efficiency variance. So the variable overhead expenditure variance, now remember variable overheads vary with direct labor hours, so we've done a fair amount of the work for this already. We're talking about the actual price for variable overheads per hour, the standard price, and the actual hours, which is the labor hours. Now the actual price will be the €10,560 paid divided by the direct labor hours. Now this gives us quite an unusual figure here, but we're just going to hang on to that figure there and keep it in our calculator. We have the standard price given in the question, and we have the actual quantity. Now, leaving this figure sitting in my calculator, I'm going to pop it in here and multiply it all out, and it comes out at 1,140 favourable. General advice is do not round numbers when you're in the middle of a calculation. Wait till you get to the end before you round them. And then finally, the variable overhead efficiency variance. Well, now since we've already mentioned variable overheads vary with the labor hours, so therefore the actual quantity and the standard quantity are going to be the same as for labor. Have a quick look back at the labor if you're not too sure. But the figures we need: actual quantity 5,850 direct labor hours, standard quantity 4,800 direct labor hours, and the price, it's €2 per direct labor hour for the variable overheads. So if I pop those in, I get 2,100 as an adverse variance. Now, if I have here 1,140 favourable, I'll take away the 2,100 adverse, and I end up with a net adverse variance of €960. Now, if I just go back to my table, you can see that's exactly what I was expecting to get. So back to the question here. That completes the calculation of the subvariances. Thank you.